Hey there, I'm Alex Kidman from Alex Reviews Tech, and this is a smartphone. Wonderful thing, smartphones. You can do all sorts of things with them. You can browse the web, you can do your shopping. On newer models, you can make crappy AI art, and oh yeah, they're also phones. And I wanted to address one of the more common comments that comes up on my phone reviews, which is some variant of, why don't you talk about what they're like for making and taking calls and the call quality? This review is rubbish. Some of the more unkind ones go into more graphic detail. You know what the internet is like, but I tend to just ignore those. As always, constructive criticism is extremely welcome, but if you've got abuse to throw my way, then spend your energy elsewhere because you're wasting your time and I'm not going to respond to you. But it is a reasonable enough point. Why don't I talk much? Why don't most phone reviewers talk much about actual phone reception in their reviews? And I want to kind of detail my approach to it. This isn't everyone, but it's certainly the way that I do it, and it's certainly the way that a lot of phone reviewers here in Australia do it that I know and whose opinions I trust. So part of the reason that I take the approach I do is because of where I live. So I live in Sydney, Australia's most populous city, and the way mobile networks are built is that the mobile network makers put the best reception, put the most towers, want to cover the most people in the areas where people live, and where most people live, not surprisingly, they've got the best coverage. And as a result, when I'm testing a phone, I'm not testing it in the most adverse conditions for the most part, except when I'm traveling, but even then it's rare. Most of the time when I'm testing a phone, I've got really good blanket coverage across all three major networks. So that's Telstra, Optus, and TPG Vodafone. And as a result, I'm not likely to see what bad performance or what poor network performance looks like. I tend to get pretty good performance. The other realistic point here is that we're a fair distance away from the time when the shape of the antenna, or whether there was a little thing protruding from the phone, would make a big difference to the reception that you got. Yes, we had antenna gate with really early iPhone models, but that was years ago. Yes, if I do notice that a particular phone is really struggling with every call I make, I will call that out, but it's been a long, long time since that's happened. So why don't I travel out somewhere it's really remote and test every single phone to exhaustion? Well, mostly because of cost and time. It's just not practical to do so. But also because while where I live gives me blanket coverage, it also gives me that single spot, and everyone's mobile coverage is variable. And the reality here is I'm not a mobile network in and of myself. And even the mobile networks test this stuff in a very, very specialized way. And I have seen this stuff in action. I visited Telstra's labs some years ago to have a look at how they test what they call blue tick phones. Optus has a slightly different term for it. I don't think Vodafone TPG talks much about this kind of approach. But what we're talking about here is phones that are more suitable for regional or rural use where network coverage might be a little bit more patchy. And the way they do that is very specialized, involves a very expensive lab setup with no other radio interference. They actually want to know, right, how well does this thing pick up signals when there's basically nothing else getting in the way? And of course, I can't replicate that in any kind of reasonable or meaningful way. And even when they do, it's just a kind of indicative thing. So a phone that gets one of Telstra's blue ticks is just recommended for regional use. They're not going to say, hey, look, this is just going to give you blanket great coverage everywhere, because even the nation's biggest telco doesn't have great coverage everywhere by landmass. By population, broadly, yes, but anyone who has travelled regionally or rurally will know there are still plenty of black spots out there. And of course, you then got to add on to the fact that, again, I'm not a mobile network, and mobile network performance can vary by time even in the same location. The best example I can give of this, I work out of a home office, and when my NBN connection goes down for maintenance, so when I know it's going to be down, or even when it's down accidentally, I suppose, everyone in my area switches over, or certainly most of them, observably, switch over to using their phones, as you would. But what that means, of course, is suddenly my mobile performance really goes down. Now, that's much more noticeable, admittedly, on the data side, because obviously I'm using it to work, they're using it to work or play, or whatever it is that they do. But it does have an effect then as well. Equally speaking, while I totally commiserate with people who want to know, hey, which phone should I buy if I've got regional issues, honestly, I'm not quite the right person to ask. Most phone reviewers are not, because we just don't have the wide enough scope to say, right, well, we'll do this kind of absolute lab testing to give you an indicative idea. And even if we did that, it wouldn't be an absolute idea in your particular circumstances. My recommendation here is certainly check what the likes of Telstra and Optus say are good performing phones in their test environments. But bear in mind that their test environment, I mean, I know this for a fact, I've said I won't say exactly what it is, but I will say Telstra's lab for testing blue tick devices isn't out in the middle of nowhere. It's in Sydney. And it's in Sydney in in an enclosed area where there's no radio interference, lots of very careful building around to make that happen, as those who might remember some elementary physics and science will appreciate. But it's in Sydney, it's not anywhere else. So it's still a simulated kind of test at the best of times. I will, of course, as I said already, try and tell you, hey, if this phone really sucks, if I think the speaker's awful, or if the reception just suffers all the time while I'm testing it, yes, I will call that out. But even amongst the cheapest of cheap phones, that's a very, very rare thing these days. Thanks for watching.